Hi guys, Steve in Utah here. It's a mid-August day and the storm clouds are building for our typical monsoon season, bringing us the promise of a little bit of rain. Today I'd like to talk about this tractor right here. This is a YANMAR YM2200. A little history about these tractors. They're considered a gray market orphan. What do I mean by that? Let me break it down for you. Gray market indicates the fact that they were never made for the U.S. market. These were made to international standards for use primarily in Asia. These tractors spent their early years probably sold to Vietnam, Cambodia, China, Japan, and they were used for small farms. They probably spent the first 20 years of its life buried to water up to here, grinding away in a rice paddy. Later on, they changed the pollution standards in Japan, and we in the U.S. have everything grandfathered in. So if you have a tractor from 1950, you can still use it. There, if it doesn't meet the current pollution standards, it's basically outlawed and become worthless. So they were brought up, refurbished, and then sold in various countries, including the United States. The term orphan refers to the fact that this particular Yanmar, the YM2200, didn't have a history of models before it and after. There's similar models, but this one itself was only made for about 2 years, 1972 and 1973, in this configuration. It is a two-wheel drive tractor. The 2200 refers to the horsepower at the PTO shaft, 22.5 horsepower. In the US, again, we measure it at the engine output. It's 27 horsepower, more or less, at the engine output. It has a manual transmission, 4 speeds in each range, plus 1 reverse. So that's a total of 8 forward and 2 reverse using the high-low range. Dry clutch. It does have hydraulics, like I mentioned. I bought it with the loader. My sole motivation for buying this tractor was I needed something with more power. I had a Ford 8N before that, and great little tractors with a lot of history, but I needed a loader, and I needed something that would lug down and pull a tiller. At the time, budget was the biggest concern. I bought this in about 2004 in Grand Junction, Colorado. At that time, it looked brand new. It had been repainted, all new stickers, all done in English. The Hobbs meter was zeroed out, which I knew at that time a 35-year-old tractor wasn't 0 hours on it. And I picked it up for just over $4 grand, and it served me really well. I have larger tractors now, but I still use it. Right now I have a brush hog on it, a shredder, and I use it for some of the smaller traps and pastures. So let me get the camera and we'll walk through some of the features of this tractor. Over the 16 years operation, I've learned a lot. I've had a few problems, and I'll share with you what I've done, what changes I make, and some tricks along the way. Okay, so here's the YM2200. We'll have a quick walk around and we'll get right into operation. First of all, you'll notice there's a solar panel on that. The thing gets parked out here and doesn't get used for a while, and batteries are so expensive. That little $12 solar panel tends to keep a trickle charge on that battery. I have it on every piece of equipment that I own. Saves batteries, for sure. Okay, so jumping on here from the operator station, of course the steering wheel. This is the TAC RPM gauge. Here we have a temperature gauge. And this here is actually a engine preheater. It's not a true glow plug, but when you take the key and turn it backwards and hold it on, you'll see that'll start to get a little bit warm, start glowing red, and there are some indications on how long to hold it on before you start in the colder temperatures. Down here below, we do have some turn signals. We have a horn. This is 4 ways that I added: headlights and the keys. Okay. This one does have a loader, so it's the standard 4-position joystick here. Dump, curl up and down. And this is the throttle. Now, what's opposite of US is throttle should go forward to increase and back to decrease. That way, if you're ever in a panic, you grab it. But here, it's just the opposite. If you pull it back, the engine increases. So if it's run away and you grab that, it's going to increase the RPM. And it only has a hand throttle. Okay. So down here on the floor, we have the brake with a splitter. Simply just flip this lever up, and you can make the tight turns and make the brakes independent. That's the dipstick for the transmission. Here's your transmission pattern, okay? It's kind of unusual. So this lever here is high range, low range. Then the 4-speed with 4th, 2nd, 1st, and 3rd. And the reverse off to one side. So that gives us our high range 4 forward, low range 4 forward, That would be 8 forward and 2 reverse. Okay, it has a clutch, interesting enough. It also has a little block right there that you can put in to hold the clutch for long time storage. This is the compression release that works well. Okay, and here is one of the 2 PTO levers, this guy right here. So this is the lower PTO lever, and here is the upper PTO lever. So these 2 levers here, 1 and 2, combine to give you your PTO speed. Now this is really unusual. In the US we have one PTO speed, that's 540 RPM. But in Japan they had different things like pumps to run water out of the rice paddy, to run a shredder, to even run a generator. So these are rough values that I penciled on just for your reference. Both levers forward, you're getting about 547, and that's at 2200 RPM. Okay, so the rear forward and the front reversed is 700 RPM. The rear reversed and the front forward is 930, and both to the back is 1231. Why would you want this in the US? I never thought it would be handy, but it is super handy. So when I'm trying to run a shredder and it's really thick and I want to gear down, and I might even go to low range with this little 5-foot shredder, I can actually drop the RPM to 1500 and then use range 2. So at 1500 RPM, you're probably down around the 500 range. Or if you went to here and dropped it to 1100 RPM, you'd be right there at about 500 RPM. So it's kind of useful. It can be very dangerous. If you start slinging a shredder at 1200 RPM, that may not go real good for you. Okay, a couple other things. The air cleaner here, it's an oil immersion type. It's kind of a pain in the butt. You actually have to unscrew the wing nut on that air cleaner to get the hood open. But they're super efficient, and you never have to buy a filter. Especially some of these older tractors, filters are really hard to get a hold of. So here is a view on it. It just says these little dogs here. You open it up and there's an oil level indicator in there. Walking around here also, on this loader, I did have some problems with cracking on this tube frame here. So we actually reinforced that with some steel. These treadle plates are kind of meant to be to run water out. As I mentioned before, these things were a lot of times used in a flooded rice paddy, so meant not to hold water. I run the R1s on it. I really like the ag tires. Here's the rear PTO setup back here. Did a couple mods on here, like the top link. I just simply got old farm boy creative there and used some old horseshoes to make the adjustments on that a lot easier. I did add this roll bar. It's not a ROPS. ROPS are a rollover system that is completely engineered. This is, you know, backyard welding. I did make a very heavy system. This is all 1/4-inch plate. This is all 1/4-inch 2x3 tubing. I did add gusset plates at every joint. I did offset it. I basically looked at what was on the market and copied it. I also, with this setup here, did a tractor pin setup so I can fold it. So it is a folding roll bar, not to be confused with a true inspected engineered ROPS. But at this particular point, none were available, and it was a lot safer to have something better than nothing. So that's my excuse, and it served me well. This tractor has been crazy stable. I've never really had it close to tipping, never really had a problem. Sometimes when you are trying to pull a fence post with the bucket, the rear end will come up a little bit, but it's really controllable. On this, I added a weight kit on these interior back wheels also, and you can add fluid to the tires for extra balance. Okay, going around the front of it, there is a little spot up front for suitcase weights if you ever needed that right here, if you didn't have a loader on it. The screen does tend to get caught up with some material. Occasionally we get some fine seeds here that tend to choke those up, and you have to be careful. I did add the radiator overflow to that, and let me go ahead and open the hood and we'll show you a few things there. All right, well, let's look under the hood. So on this one, you actually have to untwist this little wing nut and pull the upper part of the air cleaning system off. This is just the cover. We'll just set it here on the seat. pull your engine cowling open, and there it is, this little 2-cylinder Yanmar diesel engine. Room for a large battery, sits there between the dash, about a 5-gallon diesel tank. Uses about 1 liter an hour, so you get a lot of fun from five gallons of diesel fuel, 20 liters. There are a good bit of parts available these days. Originally, they were quite difficult to find parts. There's a company in Northeast Texas, up around Wichita Falls, called Hoyle Tractor, and those guys are great. Their people are professional. I've dealt with them for years. I was actually there and went by their place just to meet them one time. They have tons and tons of parts for all these little obscure tractor brands, and they will help you out with it. Not everything is available. If you have major engine problems, you'll pretty much have to write it off, but a lot of the support parts are now available. I think you can actually get rings for them now. So let's look at this little 2-cylinder, simple 2-cylinder direct injection engine. I guess one thing to say about it is if you ever run it out of fuel, this is the key one right there. So this is where your best bleed screw is to pull it from the pump. It does have a little shut-off here, which is rarely used, and a float bowl also with a small filter in it. Hoyle does have those filters. They also have the filter for the hydraulic, which is underneath the seat. I did add this overflow bottle. It's just a standard bottle from an auto parts floor from O'Reilly Auto Parts. I call it O'Reilly. But the engine's done good. It has been used and abused, I'll be honest with you. Sometimes, as you know, when you have a tough job to do and you don't really have the tractor for it, sometimes you make it work, try to save your back. There is a screen on the front which has been replaced sometimes, just trying to keep some of the dust out of it. It did have a bit of an overheating problem when dust gets clogged up in this little radiator, but mostly you can gauge and get ahead of that before you get it too hot. All right, let's shut the hood on it and we'll crank it up for you. It is pretty loud. When these came over, after being refurbished overseas, they didn't come with mufflers and seats. So they just put this little Stanley on there, and it's quite a roar. As you can see, I keep my hearing protection on. I worked too many years around helicopters not to keep my hearing safe around loud, constantly droning engines. All right, cranking this thing up. Again, the key selection. This is the preheat. You can hold it on. It's fairly warm today. Here's the throttle lever. So we're going to give it a little bit of throttle. Good. And we'll crank her up. Doesn't quite stop, so I have to kind of hold the linkage back a little bit there. And there she is. So that's pretty much all I wanted to tell you about this tractor. You may never see one of these again, but in case you stumble across one, I just wanted you to have my opinion, something to think about. There's a lot of negative information online about these tractors. If you Google Yanmar tractors to avoid, it's on the list. And for good reason. As mentioned, it's an Orphan. There wasn't a lot of years of it made. The parts are limited. If there's a major component problem, pretty well write it off. But if it's still to be in reasonable working order and the price is right, it might be worth picking up anyway. In my experience, like I said, it's been gold. It has a personality of its own. It's still used today, you know, rather than cranking up the big tractor when I got a small job to do, or when we're getting irrigation water off the mountains behind us there. I can set it in the ditch and let it pump, you know, a liter an hour. Less than $1 an hour, I can run that heavy 4-inch pump out of that too. So it does have a role to play. But again, like any piece of equipment out there, guys, you know, has it been taken care of? Has it been repaired well? Has it been maintained? Even newer tractors get treated, used, and abused and lose a lot of their value because of a bad owner or poor maintenance. So that's pretty much it, and just want to say thanks for watching, of course, and we'll see you on the next one. Have a great day. Bye.